Hello and welcome to Africa Countdown to 2024 right here on News Central TV. I am Kofi Bartels.
And I am Adebola Adedugba. Welcome on board as we count down to the year 2024.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be an interesting package and special right here on News Central TV, where we will take you across the African continent, going to several countries who are counting down. You know, Adebola, some countries are counting down to the year 2024 before other countries.
Absolutely, like a country like South Africa.
Yes, indeed.
They happen to be 1 year ahead of Nigeria. So when
Yes,
we are at about
1
12 a.m., they will
okay,
be
1 year. I like the way you put it, 1 year. Also, we have a country like Ghana, who is an hour behind Nigeria, and all the countries who are on GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, being 1 hour behind Nigeria. You have countries on West African time, like Nigeria, like Cameroon. You can see on your screen countries on WAT, West African time. We have Nigeria.
We have Niger. They happen to share same time with Nigeria. We also have countries with similar time zone with Nigeria. That's Angola, Namibia. We have Algeria. We have Tunisia. We have Cameroon, we have CAR, we have Chad, we have Benin. And those are the countries we share same time zone with.
Of course, we're looking at other time zones as well beyond the West African time. You can see East African time, or what you call West African time +2, Sudan, Eritrea, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Madagascar. Are countries that are in the same time zone. Quite interesting for the East African subcontinent.
Absolutely. Well, still same countries that will share same time zone with includes Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia. They happen to be 1 hour ahead of our time in here in Nigeria. We have Lesotho, we have Swaziland, we have South Africa, like I mentioned before. We have Republic of Congo, we have Libya and Egypt. Now, these countries happen to be, 1 hour ahead of us here in Nigeria. It means when we are saying they would have crossed over to the year 2024 ahead of us here in Nigeria.
Yes, indeed. So interesting to know our Southern African brothers will be getting ahead of those in Nigeria. Of course, we have viewers all over the continent.
Isn't that cheating, Kofi?
No. I mean, the little I remember from my geography class was about the equator.
Okay.
And that's, countries that are before the equator and those countries that are behind the equator. It was quite interesting. But if I knew I was going to be using it on TV one day, I probably would have focused on it more, not read to pass.
Okay, talk about some other time.
Yes, indeed, yes, indeed. So, as the world prepares to embrace the new year, we turn our gaze to the vibrant heartbeat of the world, that is Africa. And of course, it's a continent pulsating with a lot of promise, a lot of possibilities. Tonight, we'll join our correspondents from across the continent, families from across the continent, indeed millions of Africans, to celebrate a countdown, Africa's countdown to the year 2024. We heard from the news bulletin that countries down under, Oceania, for instance, have crossed over already into 2024. Like Australia,
even
New Zealand.
New Zealand, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
I was tracking also as at 2 p.m. today. They happen to have crossed over already to the year 2024. So
yes, indeed. I mean, beautiful videos of those fireworks display.
Absolutely.
Quite amazing. All there at the Auckland Harbour and at the Sydney Harbour with the beautiful picturesque scene of the Sydney Opera, that iconic building, with beautiful fireworks.
I mean, I'm looking forward to the splendor of those fireworks here in Nigeria
in Africa.
We cross over to the year 2024.
But you know what? We have in Africa. We have what we call knockout.
Local parlance.
We call it knockout. Banga. Banga.
Nigeria's local parlance.
Were you a fan of banga or knockout as a child?
I used to be very scared of knockouts, so really.
Really?
Back then, yeah, I used to be very scared of them. You're passing by the street, and then someone is striking a knockout, and you're running here and there for safety.
Yes, I was one of those kids who wanted to play. We had the thrill. So when our parents didn't buy us knockout, they bought the one that sparkles, that one that you just hold and you light it and it sparkles like that. We had to look for our own banga.
Wow.
So what we did was we had to go look for cupboard. Yes, we bought cupboard. We will pour a little of the cupboard in the crown cork, what we call counter. Back in the day, that's where we used to play football. We didn't have all these games. So we'll pour the carbide into the crown cork, or maybe a mineral bottle top, or counter, like we call it, and then we'll pour water inside. Now,
Talk about creativity.
We would pour a hole into a
from...
tin of milk. You know this tin of milk or this cocoa drink.
Wow.
So we'll do that, and the explosion was humongous.
Well, we're looking forward to more explosions in the sky as we count down to the year 2024. Like we mentioned earlier on, we have a correspondent who will be giving you the lights, the sounds, sights and sounds of what the street feels like as we cross over.
Well, we're not alone tonight. We're joined by a guest in the studio, of course, to look at some issues. Sorry about that. As far as the Africa's countdown to the year 2024 is concerned. Nelson Ekujumi is a political analyst. He's here live. It is Nelson. It's good to have you tonight.
Thank you for having me. Compliments to our viewers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Nelson, for you, what memories do you have of crossing over the years in Nigeria?
Well, the memories I have are what you have spoken about earlier on. I'm past 50 years old now, and I remember even when as a kid, we used to hear that they have crossed over in New Zealand and Australia with a lot of fireworks, and surprisingly, one would have thought maybe the world would have changed, that maybe we would have gotten to be ahead of them in terms of crossing over into a new year, but the world is still as it is. And you talked about Banga, the one that sparkles. I remember growing up as a boy, we used to call it Inolong. That's my Yoruba parlance. You say Inolong ki n joyan, tó bá joyan ki n pààyàn, that the light of God, will not burn you. If it burns you, it will not kill you. We took delight in those fireworks. Like you said, it was not either you call it knockout or you call it banger. And happily, we have passed that culture to the new generation. We pass it from generation to generation, because before coming here into the studio, my children were like, "Daddy, you must buy us banger. You must buy us knockout."
Interesting.
Let me just find out from you, Nelson, what do you make of discrepancies in calendar year for East African countries, like we referenced not so long ago?
Oh, what I make of it is that I'm a Christian, and the Bible said when God created the world was void and without shape. So the change or the differences in the calendar of countries, can be ascribed to the work of God. That is how God wanted the world to be. And like I told you, the knowledge about the timing zone from when I was a boy to now that I'm a man and almost going to become a grandfather, it has not changed. That means the work of God is constant. So the discrepancy in timing zones for different countries is the way God created the world, that the world, the world goes around the sun. So it's not about what man does. It's about the creation as put down by our maker.
But some people have even said, what's the impact of all this discrepancy in time zone for East African countries? Does it have any impact whatsoever on development of these countries?
Absolutely, because the different time zones reflect different geographical, environments, in terms of weather and other, variables. So it means, like we say in our local parlance, one man's meat is another man's, poison. The God has created the world in such a way that what affects country A might be different from what affects country B.
Okay, I would like you to please hold your thoughts. I am need to understand we have a correspondent who is in Kenya and will be joining us very shortly to give us just a feel of what Kenya is all about. Hanningtone will be joining us very shortly to give us a sense of how Kenyans are counting down to the year 2024. All right,
hello, Hanningtone.
Yes.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Have you crossed over into 2024 years? Well, you are about an hour away, so I don't think you have. But give us a sense of what the festivities over there in Nairobi and other parts of Kenya are as we count down into the new year.
Thank you, Kofi. In exactly 11 minutes, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania in East Africa will be crossing over to 2024. Obviously, there's excitement around. There are fireworks around where I am in Nairobi, and people are obviously excited to cross over to 2024. But that does not mean that 2023 has been exactly a year people are looking forward to, especially in Kenya. It's a year which was marked with new political developments, a new government settling in, and obviously the main thing that you'll hear around is the cost of living and, the skyrocketing taxes and prices. Inflation went out of record, new taxes were introduced, and people are hoping that as we cross over into the new year 2024, that there's going to be some tone down on on these runaway economic indicators, and that life would be a bit bearable. So this high cost of living and taxation has actually brought a lot of shadow over what would have been great festivities as expected every year. Otherwise, there's a lot of excitement as people wait to cross over into the new year in about 10 minutes.
All right. I know you've mentioned the hike in the cost of living in Kenya, but beyond all of those challenges, what is your favorite news story in Kenya for the year 2023?
Obviously, even within the gloom, there are a number of good developments that happened, and one of them is that Kenya and South Africa finally realized the free migration policy, where for the first time, Kenyans and South Africans could travel freely between their countries for up to 90 days without the requirement of a visa. When we spoke here, when we were crossing over from 2022 to 2023, I remember saying, I look forward to a 2023 where movement and migration in Africa, intra-African migration, is going to be more relaxed and more free. So for me, that was a big news within that year. And obviously, the welcoming of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Somalia into the East African community also means something better for Kenya, that the economic pie is expanding. The areas to move to and settle in within Africa is growing. So for me, those two pieces of news were quite major milestones within this year for the Republic of Kenya and the East African community at large.
All right, Hanningtone, I'm not very certain if you were able to get a glimpse of your surrounding, and how would you describe it if you were?
Obviously, something to note is, just like Nigeria, over festivities, most Kenyans move away from the city. They travel to the villages. So I'm thinking that the villages are going to get a better view of the migration than the city. In the city, obviously, there are fireworks. A few of us remaining in the city are doing fireworks, are clubbing around. There's excitement, cars hooting around. And so there's that ecstasy that people are hoping, what does this new thing bring our way to the old news and to the old times of 2023? What, we can't wait to see what the 1st of January 2024 has on the table. Obviously, it's just a calendar change, but then in the human mind, that calendar change also brings, some change of mindset and change in the environment. So there's ecstasy around, and there's excitement, and expectations are quite high, especially around economic changes.
Hanningtone, quite interesting. You're giving us a sense of, what the New Year crossover festivities are like in Kenya. Would I be right to say that, in the two major cities in Kenya, Nairobi and Mombasa, you have sort of a difference in population? I don't know if that's correct. Maybe you have more of an Islamic population in Mombasa and more of a Christian / Western leading population. I don't know if that's true. But is there a difference in how these festivities, Christmas into New Year, are approached in Mombasa and Nairobi, or in Nairobi, Mombasa, and other parts of Kenya?
Oh, thank you, Kofi. Actually, there could have been a difference because Mombasa is predominantly occupied by people who profess Islamic faith, and obviously that there's a culture that comes with it, while Nairobi and other cities are more Western oriented. But as we speak, probably half of Nairobi is in Mombasa, so the celebrations in Mombasa will not go down the Islamic way. They'll go down the Nairobi way. Actually, Mombasa is a big point for ushering in New Year. Government, private parties, and private establishments find Mombasa being a coastal getaway a good way. So at the moment as we speak, actually that is the epicenter. Major hospitalities, hotels, there are street carnivals going down in Mombasa. So the celebrations would be as wild as they would be in Nairobi and elsewhere.
Talking about hospitality, Kenya we know is a hub for hospitality in Africa, for tourism, a leading country you can call it. But we're aware of the difficulties in growing the tourism industry there, or the difficulties that the tourism industry in Kenya has faced because of terrorism. We can talk about the mall, attack, Al-Shabaab and all that. So is that sort of affecting how many tourists troop to Kenya to cross over? Is that affecting the nature of the celebrations, even by Kenyans themselves? Hanningtone?
Not largely. Of course, there are areas in Kenya, especially areas interfacing with Somalia, that's Lamu, Garissa, Mandera, that have seen terrorist attacks even in the last 2 or 3 days. In Mandera, police station was actually attacked. I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday by a troop of over 20 militants who were hoping they could run it over in a style, probably to usher New Year in style. Challenge of terrorism has greatly contributed to decline of tourism in Kenya, and from time to time we get travel advisories by Western countries, recently even by the Chinese embassy in Nairobi. And when that happens, obviously people are not going to travel blindly; they are going to listen to their government. So to an extent, the emergence of terrorism, especially in the last decade, has threatened and has contributed to decline of tourism in Kenya. For the positive side is that the government has continued to invest in security infrastructure. There is specific security unit called Tourism Police, whose work is to protect foreign tourists visiting Kenya. And there's a lot of investment and in intelligence gathering. That means we don't have to wait for the actual events to occur, but they are arrested before they occur. For 2023, you'd notice that most attacks by terrorists actually occurred in the peripheries. They were occurring in the border towns. They were not getting into the interior. There were few incidents of terrorists being caught midway trying to move towards Nairobi. So to an extent, I would say the security has played a good role in trying to assure that there is a bit of security. But the places like Mombasa, the epicenter of partying, and Nairobi at this time, there are no active threats of terrorism. And so I want to believe that while we've not seen as many tourists as we would have seen over this period, the causes are something else compared to terrorism. I would cite one of the recent quite distasteful events where Kenya Revenue Authority tried to introduce some form of administrative process that was considered harassment for visitors coming into Kenya, where they to have their hand luggages opened, checked, investigated, and every minute thing would have to be charged tax. The government had to stamp it and say, this is not how we intend to build tourism in Kenya. So the contributor for decline of tourism is more to do with that policy of harassment as opposed to terrorism, in my view.
All right, Hanningtone, just a quick time check. How many minutes away are you from the new year?
It's 1 minute and a fraction, and already from my background, if you can gather it, the fireworks are already up, and people are already feeling like they are already in the new year. So it's actually 11:59. So in a few seconds, probably 50 seconds, the clock will be changing in Kenya.
Okay, if you don't mind sharing, I would like to ask you, what would be your personal hopes or aspirations or wishes for the year 2024?
Thank you so much. And for me, being an African first, I would like to see really a different narrative in the intra-African poverty. The growth of poverty in Africa affects me directly. If I can feed and my neighbor cannot feed, then there's no positive thing to say about it. So it is a personal aspiration that we can face as Africans our economic growth differently. We can see decline. We hope for a decline in poverty in Africa, and we hope for better terms of trade within the inter-African trade.
All right, I think we have crossed into the new year in Kenya already. Okay, we are counting down. We can see that. 8. It's going to be quite interesting to do this with you, Hanningtone. Just about 3 seconds. And there we go. 1, and Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! It's a Happy New Year in the country of Kenya.
And in the East African sub-region.
Absolutely. Wow.
Interesting. Happy New Year. Hanningtone, Happy New Year.
Kofi and your colleagues.
Hanningtone, a very Happy New Year to you. Welcome to 2024 ahead of us.
Happy New Year. We know in a few hours, in another 2 hours, I believe you'll also be there.
Yeah, Hanningtone, if you can hear us, we lost a bit of audio connection with you, so you have to repeat what you just said.
I'm very sure due to what is going on, there has to be a bit of instability of my connections or even the sound. I hope I can now be heard.
You can be heard, yes. Yes.
We can blame it on the new year.
Happy New Year, even for Nigeria and the rest of Africa that is on a different time zone. We wish you the very best as you expect the new year in an hour or two.
Okay, I was wondering, Hanningtone, if it's possible, if you can just give us a glimpse of what outside looks like. From your window, sure. If it's possible.
Let me take a minute and check if we are able to.
All right. Well, I think Hamilton has given us that feel already from Nairobi and other parts of Kenya and indeed the East African continent as they've crossed even over to 2024. That's the beauty of nature. I'm sure, sir, you'd agree that shows
absolutely,
the Almighty and the wonders of creation.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said earlier, if there's anything you cannot take away from God, is that consistency. That the way God has created the world has remained in that shape. That when you were a boy, maybe 30, 50, 100 years ago, people in East Africa, get into the new year before us here in West Africa, and that continents like Asia, when you talk about Australia and New Zealand, you see them, they are about 10, 11, 12 hours ahead of us. So it is natural that they will mark the new year before us here in this part of the world. So it's the wonder of God's creation that you cannot just explain, and that is how it is.
Now, talking about the new year, let's just do a very quick, brief recap of how the year 2023 has played out. Let's look at INEC, the electoral reforms. What do you predict come the year 2024 for INEC?
Well, the year 2024 for INEC, if you follow the announcement by the body through the chairman of the institution. They are going to have some by-elections and some by-elections and some other elections for 2024. If you ask me, INEC's conduct of elections over the years has been a remarkable improvement from previous years, because INEC as a body has worked with other stakeholders such that they have improved the electoral process. A lot of times people come out, to pour mud on INEC. And when they pour mud on INEC, I think any rational being, even if you want to fall for such attack, you should be wise enough to ask for facts and evidences. A lot of times, those attacks have been driven majorly by emotions than any other thing.
All right, so we just take a pause because Hanningtone is still with us. And Hanningtone, good to have you back. Are you there, Hanningtone? Can you hear us, please? Okay, yes, sorry about that. Yes, maybe next time we'll take that look outside your window. We'll let that go for now. I mean, what does 2024 look like for Kenya as a country? And, what's the outlook as far as you're concerned?
Obviously, the challenges that were encountered in 2023 will not end just because the calendar has changed to a 4 from 3. We have to continue with the dreaming and trying to extricate ourselves as Kenyans out of biting poverty. I think poverty is a concern in Kenya, just as it is in the rest of Africa, and also tone down, especially on the sovereign debt, which is a major contributor to poverty in Kenya and in the rest of Africa. As you are aware, 3 African countries have already defaulted in their sovereign debts. That should be Ghana, Zambia, and recently Ethiopia. Kenya was at the brink of default until last week. The government made some last-minute dash and managed to save the country from a technical default, but otherwise it is deep into sovereign debt, what we call debt trap. So those two things, poverty and the sovereign debt trap, are things that are going to linger in 2024, no matter what we try to do as Kenyans. And there are 2 things that we must address our minds to. But Kenya has also recently signed an economic partnership agreement with the European Union, just like it did with the United Kingdom in the year 2021. And it's our hope that while these kind of agreements are normally one-sided, that Kenya could see some benefit out of it, especially given that trade with EU has faced a lot of challenges. So there's some glimmer of hope that there's going to be some improved trade terms with European Union, and that we could get better deals also out of our sovereign debt situation and have an improvement over elevation of poverty situation in the country.
Okay, Hanningtone, do you have any personal New Year resolutions?
Very much. I would like to travel Africa. I'm hoping that there's going to be peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I would like to visit River Ubangi and really travel the vastness of Africa's, of the world's naturally rich country. That is my personal aspiration this year, that I manage to tour in very private capacity and without work involved the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I wish them peace even as they come out of election.
All right, it's quite interesting. We are hearing from you. We hear the fireworks in some parts of East Africa. We can't tell exactly where. But Hanningtone, Amol, it's been a pleasure having you, and thank you so very kindly for crossing over into the year 2024 with us right here on News Central TV. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and I wish you a Happy New Year as well.
Happy New Year, even though we're here behind you. Thank you so much, Hanningtone. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. Anyway, we're still on Africa Countdown 2024. Our guest is still here with us. Adebola and myself will be back after this short break. Please stay with us.